Today for the current affairs, a combination of both prelims and mains. First we will start with two mains articles. One is Wikipedia, the second is age of consent. Okay, very important from governance perspective, age of consent, polity and governance both. And one is article basically controlling the intermediaries, Wikipedia, right? Anybody had read this article in the newspaper? Before we start discussing about this article in detail, Wikipedia. Anybody who has read this article? How many of you are reading newspapers? Shiva is reading, Vani is reading, Yogeshwar is reading. हाँ, बाकियों ने डिसाइड किया कि नहीं पढ़ेंगे जब तक ओबराय सर नहीं बताएंगे. हाँ, पढ़ ले बेटा, अभी तो टाइम है. ठीक. या Wikipedia. How many? हाँ, बोलो वानी. क्या? What is the article about? It is not about the cricketer. Cyber bullying. He has used a technical word. Cyber. It is technically not cyber bullying also. Okay, cyber bullying has got other dimensions. We will discuss about that now that you have used the word. Yeah. Defamation. Okay, defamation. Not exactly about defamation, but again we will discuss this one. Don't. Open source. Okay, good. Anybody, what is open source? The source which is open, don't say that. Huh. What is open source? We are all now पढ़े लिखे लोग. She says that open source is a source in which the editing rights, very important, the crux of this article is about editing rights. The editing rights are loosely controlled. ठीक है? The word you should be using is the editing rights are loosely controlled. It means anybody can edit. After attending a class in Ekam, you feel you got some information about a particular dimension. You go to Wikipedia, open that page, you can add that information if that information is already not there, provided that page is not a provided that page by Wikipedia has not been classified as a protected page. If it is not classified as a protected page, it means that it is an open source document in which editing can be performed even by non-administrators. Very important term, non-administrators. They also can do the requisite editing in that particular page. Now, why is it so that this has been done? What is the crux? What is the crux? Go to polity, go back to polity. Freedom of expression. This is a written expression. Just see one article, how many dimensions related to your subject are opening up. So it is basically related to your freedom of expression, but provided that word, statements or content is not very important, is not abusive, is not abusive or not ठीक है, provided that whatever content you are either adding, editing is not abusive or misleading, then you can exercise your right. See, Wikipedia was started which year? Can anybody? 2001 only Wikipedia started. Just imagine, in a span of just about 20 years, can you today survive without Wikipedia? We say, no, very loosely we say Google Tali, and when you open Google Tali, the first lead is Wikipedia, right? So it means over a period of 20 years, it captured the top slot of internet, right? Why it captured the top slot of internet? Because it allowed people to very important. there are lakhs of search engines. Can you name even 3 of them? Very difficult, no? Why? I am saying there are lakhs of search engines, but you cannot name any of them, primarily because we have got so much used to, only and only because he allowed you to edit. That is the reason why over a period of hardly 20 years, it became the most acceptable search engines across the globe. Now, coming to the essence of the article, as we said, it is an open source, right? Because it is an open source, one fellow, what he did, he opened his page and he linked this page who is Khalistan? कौन बताएगा? हाँ, what is this Khalistan all about? Freshers to talk. हाँ, बोल बेटा. हाँ, who wanted an independent country by name Khalistan. ठीक है? So now, because he belonged to the community, which is basically a notion that they are asking for a separate state, a small act of him, which was an error, immediately he was linked to this. The moment this was done, the government came to his rescue. Did the government punish him? No, right? The government came to his rescue by immediately calling whom? How it so happened that an individual, a celebrity or a person who is contributing or representing India in international cricket, his page got linked to Khalistan. What are you doing? Then what is the reply of Wikipedia? The moment government called Wikipedia, summoned them. See, in the last couple of years, when I say couple, hardly 5 years minus, before this, any of the intermediaries, whether it is Meta, Twitter, Microsoft or whatever, Google or Amazon or for that matter, these people never had local offices in India. Now what is the problem? Anything going wrong, whom to contact is the biggest question mark. So in the last 5 to 6 years, government has mandated, ever since the new government has come into power after 2014, the government mandated, if you are digitally present in India, your office has to be physically present in India. So that if anything goes wrong on your office, I will summon you and you are supposed to respond within 72 hours. If you do not respond within 72 hours, I will block your content in my country forever. That is the big question mark. The moment this thing happened, and when they called up Wikipedia and asking what are you doing when this has happened, the very beautiful response, he said that, sir, I am not a pure intermediary, very important word in cyber security. He said, sir, I am not a pure intermediary. Like say WhatsApp is there. Is WhatsApp an open source? No, right? WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, you cannot do anything in between, right? So it is not an open source, it is a closed source. It means WhatsApp has employed its own administrators, yes or no? So it means it has got controlling powers of its platform, yes or no? WhatsApp has controlling power of its platform. Anything going wrong, I can tell him, what are you doing, yes or no? The moment I can tell him what are you doing, he becomes duty bound to respond to my question. But now he says that, sir, I am also an intermediary, I am only providing the platform, I am giving end-to-end encryption between Sushma and Pawan. What they are talking, even my administrators do not come to know, nothing is saved on my servers. This is the stand he took, right? The moment WhatsApp took this stand, your government said, no, you are an intermediary responsibility, you are an intermediary and you are duty bound to exercise something known as due diligence. This is a word the government uses, okay? you are supposed to exercise due diligence. It means if you come to know that something wrong is happening on your platform, either through a court order or through any agency of the government, if they say that your platform is being used for some inimical elements, antisocial activities, you become duty bound to cut that communication channel. So this is all about due diligence. So when this topic came, he said, sir, I am not even an intermediary. He is an intermediary, I am not even an intermediary, I am only a person who is just providing a platform, and which is on top of it, it is not closed, it is an open source. You cannot tell me anything like this. That is when the government said this due diligence, even though you are not in the technical definition of intermediary, you are duty bound to exercise due diligence as if you are an intermediary. Come to the article. What is the article saying? Just open the first paragraph. The second line, it says to increase Wikipedia's reliability and also to prevent vandalism and disruptive edicts. This is a disruptive edit. This is a disruptive edit. Yes or no? Yes, sir. Disruptive edit means an edit which what you call disturbs the peace and tranquility in the society. The state is responsible to maintain public order, peace and tranquility in the state. If that is disturbed, the act immediately will become a disruptive act. What is vandalism? Vandalism, Agnipath happened, no? The moment Agnipath scheme was released by the government, the crowd went RE and they deliberately destroyed the public and private property. So vandalism is an act which is deliberate, in which either public or private property gets destroyed. So the moment anything of this sort happens, it says that to increase Wikipedia's reliability and also to prevent what vandalism and disruptive edits, there are restrictions on edits to the content that Wikipedia hosts, and one of these restrictions is to allow certain protections. And now what are these protections? That is very, very important. Try to understand these protections. Just flip over the page. Flip over the page. Come, are there no control mechanisms for content, what you call content on Wikipedia? It says that even though majority of the content is user generated, the Wikimedia Foundation is the owner of Wikipedia, okay? The Wikimedia Foundation has instituted some content moderation practices. Underline this word, content moderation. This is the topic of your today, content moderation, right? First, to increase its reliability and also to prevent vandalism and disruptive edits, over time restrictions have been placed on edits to the content that Wikipedia hosts. One of these restrictions is to allow certain protections, right? In that, when you come to the next paragraph, it says to implement this system of protection, Wikipedia classifies users depending on the edit rights that they have. For example, one of the highest levels of protection that can be accorded to a page is what? Full protection. It means the moment a page is classified as a full protected page, only the authorized administrators can carry out any changes to that particular page. So that page will become what? A fully protected page. Now come to the responsibility. The moment anything goes wrong on the fully protected page, Modi will catch whose collar? Wikipedia's collar, because it is your administrator who is controlling. But one more important dimension you need to understand, that even these authorized administrators are very important, not on the payrolls of Wikipedia. Very, very important dimension. The way WhatsApp has its own employees as administrators on their payrolls, Wikipedia does not have even these authorized what you call administrators on their payrolls. It means still it can escape judicial oversight, because these administrators are not employees of Wikipedia. They get the rights of administration based on something known as peer reviews. Maybe a very important person in a particular domain, if he writes, because he is an authority in that area, if he writes something, people may accept him as an administrator of that particular page over a period of time. But that does not make him employee of Wikipedia, very important. And second is semi-protected. First is fully protected and the second classification is semi-protected. What it says, a slightly lower level of protection is semi-protection. Semi-protected pages cannot be edited by unregistered users. So any user, if he wants to do anything edit in a semi-protected page, he has to register himself. The moment he has to register himself, he will have to divulge the basic details of himself, so that anything goes wrong, the government can catch hold of that particular individual. Semi-protected. And the last category is pending changes. It is a lower level of protection than semi-protection, wherein even though if you have carried out any changes on the page, that would be reflected only after somebody authorized that change. Okay. So, the third category of protection provided is pending changes. See, we are trying to read all these dimensions from the point of view of what I told you, very important, governance के point of view. 100% question will come either this year or next year. He will just change the dimension and will ask a question to you. So, all these points are very important. Okay? Flip over the page. See, it starts by saying the first line, however, most of the individuals that perform tasks for Wikipedia, such as those holding designation of bureaucrats, administrators or other editors with varying level of edit rights, are not employees of Wikipedia. As I told you, these individuals gain such designation and exercise attendant rights through a community review process, a peer review process. Okay. Now does it mean in that case then how can Wikipedia be held responsible? See, as a bureaucrat and as a government representative, your responsibility to catch hold of Wikipedia, because it is at the end of the day it is his platform that is being used for some anti-social activities. Now what the government is saying, despite all these dimensions, how I can catch hold of Wikipedia? The first point, it says that first the Wikimedia Foundation legally controls the servers. Very important, underline the word Wikimedia. What it does, it legally controls the servers on which Wikipedia's content is held. It means that even they do not have ownership of the user generated content hosted on Wikipedia, they are in the control of the user activity information generated on these servers, because these servers are controlled by Wikipedia. So, it means that this is one level where I can catch hold of Wikipedia, even though even the administrators are not the employees of Wikipedia, on the ground that because this information is stored on their servers and they have the controlling stakes on the servers, on that dimension I can hold Wikipedia responsible for the content on their website. And second, what they say, the Wikimedia Foundation also exercise controls on who the system administrators of Wikipedia are. These system administrators, they are not talking about those peer-to-peer administrators. It is not talking about the edit administrators. It is talking about the system administrators. You are also the controlling authority for the system administrators. On these grounds also I can hold you responsible. Okay. Now if given a question on this dimension, can you write in mains or not? Or yes or no? What is the question? Flip over the page. The recent case of Arshdeep's Wikipedia data getting edited with misleading information once again opens the discussion related to intermediary responsibility on social media platforms. Discuss. Can you write 2 pages front and back? Okay, we will see at 2:30. Okay. Now come back to the other article, just an article before that, again on governance related issue. Older adolescents engaging in consensual and non-exploitative acts find themselves embroiled in the criminal justice system. Very, very important. Age of consent related to governance topic. Related to age of consent. This consent is basically for engaging in what you call sexual acts. Very, very important, because in India for the children below the age of 18 years you have something known as, anybody, what is the full form? Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012. Can anybody tell why this act came in the year 2012 only? Why not 10, 14, 15 or 5 or 8? Open a box and write why this act in 2012. What international convention India became signatory to that resulted in the enactment of the POSCO Act 2012, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. Okay. Now see what happened in what do you call, in Karnataka. One of the girl's father filed a complaint against a 20-year-old boy who eloped with his daughter who was minor, below the age of 18 years. When this case came to the court, the girl said that though I went with him when I was a minor, I married him after attaining the age of 18 years, and now we also have a son from this relationship. Now the problem here comes is the problem of what you call justice, the end justice. Now tell me, the act is saying that a consensual act, what the POSCO says is, even if you establish a consensual relationship with a minor, even if the minor gives a statement that it was a consensual act, still you can be booked for an act of rape. So it says that now that they have ended up into a relationship and also have a son, now the importance of the court is to meet the end justice. Where do the end justice lie? Here comes the dimension of polity that you study about is constitutional. Tell me फटाफट, इतना time नहीं लगता है. Constitutional morality. Very, very important dimension of your polity. So now the court is also under a dilemma. Should I follow the rule book or should I apply something else? So in this particular case, if you flip over the page, what the girl argues or requests the court is, sir, I request you to please open the CRPC and open section 482 of the CRPC, the Criminal Procedure Code. It says that faced with criminal prosecution and incarceration, the only relief available to the couple is to urge the High Court to quash the case by its inherent power under section 482 of the CRPC to prevent abuse of the process of any court or otherwise to secure the ends of justice. So that is a very beautifully opened up discussion in front of the High Court. They are saying that we know under the POSCO whatever I have done is a offence, a non-cognizable offence which amounts to rape, but because we have moved further into our relationship, I request your honorable court to invoke section 482 of the CRPC, which makes it mandatory or duty bound to the court to ensure that its process meets the ends of justice. Okay? Now normalcy of relationship, see try to understand the in most of these cases the real effort is to get the bail. Here they have used a word quash, उसमें statement में है ना use the word quash. What is the meaning of this quash? To completely remove this particular case is quashing. We call it quash petition. We call it quash petition. Generally at the level of High Court or Supreme Court, these quash petitions are what you call filed. So it is saying you please quash the case. It means completely remove this case. But it may not. It is not that easy to quash this level of cases. So now the discussion moves from quashing to giving bail to the individual, and it has been seen that in most of these cases, see the NCRB, the National Crime Record Bureau, it says that around these many cases have been filed under the POSCO, and most of the cases are against the adolescents. Adolescents is who have crossed 15, 16 but still minor, not completed 18 years of age. What the court says that this is the age of trying to understand life through trial and error. Because of the increased sexual orientations, the children in this age group end up in relationship with people who are also in this age group or probably higher than in this age group. There was one case in Odisha where a 24-year-old boy was in consensual relationship with a 16-year-old girl. Now though the age factor is, the gap of the age factor is higher, but the court felt that because there is a gap of 8 years, you cannot say that she cannot have a relationship develop with a guy who is 8 years elder to her, even though she is an adolescent. Okay? So that is how the consent, that is why the important is the right to consent is very, very important. And as the democracy progresses, as the privacy rights progresses, you will see that this gets the higher recognition more than any statute. More than any statute. So where this is when we call the society to be more progressive in its nature, when consent is given more importance than what is written in the rule book. But one dimension what the court has to make sure is that there is no exploitation, very, very important dimension. If in this particular cases, if you rule out this particular dimension that there is no exploitation, exploitation means the children in this particular age group are subject to exploitation mostly, and this exploitation is initiated primarily by the what you call mostly by the relatives. So the only thing when you go for these kind of cases to the court looks for is whether it is an exploitative act or it is a non-exploitative act. So that's the reason why, go back to your heading. What is the heading? Consensual and non-exploitative acts find themselves embroiled in the criminal justice system. Now come back to the normalcy of relationship paragraph, very, very important. Now see, one important question which has been under discussion in many of the countries, not only in India, how do you classify the age of consent? Now we have progressed to a time what you call in society that you are saying this is probably an age of consent. In that case, why this is not an age of consent? Why this is not an age of consent? Has this age of consent should be sacrosanct? Maybe in one country this is the right age of consent, in other country this would be the right age of consent, maybe in some other country this would be the right age of consent. So that is the reason why in India, as per the POSCO Act, you have defined that this as a minor, is as a anybody under the age of 18 as minor. So that is why I said even a consensual act can be punished as if somebody has committed a crime of rape. Now this is when the court is in dilemma, should I consider it to be an age of consent or I give importance to what the relationship has gone ahead in a particular direction. So that is the biggest challenge. Now open and see, she says several other high courts too have recognized the normalcy of these relationships, the futility of prosecuting, futility means wastage, okay, the futility of prosecuting romantic cases owing to the consensual nature of the relationships and marriage between the parties, as well as the harmful impact of continued prosecution on both the parties. Very, very important, right? It says that while quashing a similar case in Vijay Lakshmi versus State Representative, the Madras High Court observed that punishing an adolescent boy who enters into a relationship with a minor girl by treating him as an offender was never the objective of the POSCO Act. So they invoke these kind of what you call sentiments. Now come to the last paragraph. While the same page, while the marriage between the parties appears to have influenced several high courts, it means when that consensual relationships progress towards a marital relationship, that is when the high courts get influenced. It says that while the marriages between the parties appears to have influenced several high courts and resulted in the quashing of the romantic cases under the POSCO Act, sexual behavior is normative during adolescence and not all relationships end in marriage. This dimension also has to be taken. So the only stand what we have observed that the courts take is they only try to explore that whether there is an exploitation of a particular girl who is a minor or not. Based on that only the prosecution generally proceeds. And if you see just 2 paragraphs above, before that law reform paragraph, the last line, acquittals were recorded in how many percentage of cases? 93.8% of cases it has resulted in acquittal. It means the court has understood that it is a non-exploitative consensual act. Very, very important. Now what is the question? Do you agree that there is a compelling need for law reform to revise the age of consent and prevent the criminalization of older adolescents engaged in factually consensual and non-exploitative acts? Give your views. So when you write the answer for this particular question, your stand should be generally fulcrumed toward the exploitation dimension. Very, very important. Okay. Now come to the other article, Watchdog 2022. We'll go from behind. Watchdog 2020. Yeah. What is this exercise? Anybody? Watchdog 2022. Bina pade. Joint military exercise. The technical terms you use here. Watchdog 20. As you all said, it is a joint military exercise. Now, can anybody tell me what is the essence, importance of any joint military exercise? What is the essence? Why do you do joint military exercise? Why do you want to do joint military exercise with Russia or China or US or Japan or Australia or Israel, for that matter even China? कौन एक हाथ उठाओ, हाथ उठाओ. हाँ. No adversary will share the superior technology with. तेरे को लगता है चाइना वाला उसका टेक्नोलॉजी तेरे को दिखा देगा? Will America ever showcase its technology to China in a joint military exercise, knowing China is very good in reverse engineering? नहीं समझा? When Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden was, operation, what was the name of the operation? Osama bin Laden was killed. Operation? अभी मैं अल्लू अर्जुन का फर्स्ट मूवी का नाम पूछूंगा, फट से आंसर आएगा, है ना? अगली मूवी का भी पूछूंगा, फट से आंसर आएगा। हाँ बनाओ, बॉक्स बनाओ, जल्दी से गूगल करो उसके बारे में, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। इन दैट ऑपरेशन one of the American helicopters crashed, no, with the boundary wall where this guy was, finally captured or killed, whatever. A helicopter of US crashed there. There was an operation launched to remove the debris of that helicopter also. What is the fear? The enemy, or for that matter Pakistan as a country also, can take the debris and try to see what all equipment he has put on board helicopter. Can I also do that? So that is how removing the technological debris from the site of operation also assumes greater significance. So if this is the case, do you think you will exchange what you call technological exchanges during a joint military exercise? No. Then why do you do joint military exercise? यार इंडिया, पाकिस्तान और चाइना तीनों आर पार्ट ऑफ SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We all know two people are aggressors here. One is Pakistan, the second is his brother China. और उसके साथ मिलके how you plan to fight terrorism? हाँ अब बोलो. His brotherhood. She is living in a too good world. She has to come out to in the practical world. There is one word. Very important word. This is the underlining reason why we carry out a joint military exercise. Interoperability. It means, say for example, my Navy, American Navy wants to carry out an exercise. Now my ship is here. I am too bad at drawing, please forgive me. This is the best I can draw, a ship, right? Now this is Indian ship and this is US ship. If they have to communicate with each other, there has to be some source of communication. In that source of communication, probably it could be a radio communication, yes or no? वहाँ पे तो मोबाइल चलेगा नहीं, वहाँ पे व्हाट्सएप तो चलेगा नहीं. So it has to be a radio communication. If that has to be a radio communication, I should know what frequency he is using. Or yes or no? I should know the bandwidth that he is using. So all these dimensions come under. So in case of a real event, if both combinedly have to fight our common adversary, say for example China, I should know he operates on which frequency and what is the bandwidth that he is using. So that at that particular point of time, you do not hustle with each other कि तेरा frequency क्या है, मेरा frequency क्या है. You getting my point? So that is the reason why this interoperability assumes greater significance. ठीक है? Though all the points that you people said are valid, it is not that technological know-how transfer नहीं होता है. All these things do happen, but the most important dimension is to check the interoperability. Now why this is in news is, the biggest challenge why this is in news is, there is one entity, please, what is that entity? What is that entity? What organization? उसके पहले क्या लिखा है? Collective Security Treaty Organization. Very very important. ये क्या है? कौन बताएगा? हाँ पुराने वाले, हाँ so called veterans. He is closest there but not there. Collective Security Treaty Organization. हाँ कौन बताएगा? सुधा. एनिमी रे, सिस्टर नहीं. सिस्टर नहीं, एनिमी है. Collective Security Treaty Organization. 1991 USSR got integrated, no? अरे USSR United Socialist Soviet Republic है ना? तो once it got disintegrated in 1991, 15 sovereign states emerged. Independent states came out of, that's what is united, no? लावण्य सो रहा है, सुबह सुबह 12 बजे सोएगा इंडिया का यूथ, तो क्या होगा वॉचटॉक एक्सरसाइज में? हाँ गणेश विसर्जन करके आया, कल गया था नहीं गया, फिर भी सो रहा है. हाँ? लोग अभी भी नाच रहे हैं सुबह गाड़ी में. I see their zeal here. It is raining, pouring heavily. He is least bothered. That is the motivation. और यहाँ क्लास में सो रहे हो, मैं पढ़ा रहा हूँ वॉच टॉक. तुम्हारा मोटिवेशन उनके सामने कंपैरेटिव स्केल किधर है? हाँ, ये सर मेरी तबीयत खराब है, मैं नहीं आऊँगा क्लास, है ना? Your motivation is missing. The fire in the belly is missing. The fire in the belly comes when somebody kicks you. When it will come? When it should come? When it should come? When do you feel most helpless? When do you feel most helpless? When you are right, the other person is wrong, but he is still overpowering you. You feel helpless, right? So what you need? What you need? Power. You need power. And what UPSC will give you? And where you will show that power? Firstly, on your parents. On your parents. अभी जो शादी कर रहे हैं ना पेरेंट्स, एक बार शादी करोगे, बोला अगली बार आने से पहले फोन करके आना. You will tell your parents, next time when you come to see me, please call and come. Don't come without calling me. This will come in your personality. That power to tell no in that frame of words or sentences will come to you. Why? Because now you are not powerless, you are powerful. You are powerful. Now you are not helpless, you are full of power. So if you want that power, you should not sleep at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I told you the biggest threat to this nation is youth. The biggest threat to the nation is youth, and indisciplined youth, unemployed youth, educated youth. They are all threat to our country. Educated, unemployed youth, they are the threat to the country. So do you want to be a threat or an asset? Asset, no? If threat also, you should be a good threat. You should give good punch to Modi. You've seen this movie, no? KGF 2. कहाँ जाता है सीधा मिलने के लिए? प्राइम मिनिस्टर के सामने. You either have that kind of power, है ना? One guy caught in Delhi, no? पुष्पा देख के he's killed 14 people. He killed 14 people, no? He got motivated. तुम्हारे अंदर मोटिवेशन ही नहीं आ रहा है. वो मूवी देख के मोटिवेट हो गया, 14 लोगों को मार दिया. Now Allu Arjun should be in jail, no? अरे yes or no? Technically, you are glorifying crime. You are glorifying crime. That's what is happening. KGF glorified crime. Now the Bollywood, Hollywood has also agreed that there cannot be a better actor than him. Even the actors are getting influenced. So just imagine how much a hero playing a antagonist role can influence the society. So do you want to be that hero, or you want to be a chocolate by Mahesh Babu hero? So you decide. ठीक है? चलो, no more sleeping. अभी सो के मारूंगा, ठीक है? Now, collective security treaty organization, when USSR got disintegrated, some post-Soviet states, some 6 of them, they joined together and formed an organization with Russia also on board. They joined an organization, and this was the collective security treaty organization is primarily a military alliance. Very, very important. What is an alliance? What is an alliance? PSIR. कौन है इधर? कोई है PSIR का? हाँ बोल रहे. What is an alliance? Same as NATO. NATO is an example of alliance. What is that purpose? Common defense. The purpose is common defense. If they are in what you call alliance with each other, if Pawan hits Vani or what you call Rashmi, even if it hits Vani, Rashmi will automatically come to protect Vani even though he has not directly hit Rashmi. So it means it is a kind of common defense umbrella. NATO is a classic example of common defense. India has historically never entered into an alliance partnership with anybody. India has not entered into an alliance partnership with anyone. Now when you say that India has not entered into alliance partnership with anyone, then why are you participating in Vostok 2022, which also have members who are an alliance? For that matter, SCO is also an SCO is also has military dimensions to it, which is on the dimensions of an alliance. Though India is part of that, India still claims that it is only primarily, as somebody said, to fight terrorism in some dimensions. Which dimensions we need not know. So the reason why it is in news is, the moment you are participating in this, US will start crying, okay, bhaiya, why are you participating in this? Then India had to say, the last paragraph, India also defended its participation in the exercises in response to US criticisms, saying that India has been regularly participating in multilateral exercises in Russia along with a number of other countries. And the best or the worst part here is, all your friends are also in this, all your friends are here. Believe me, they are your friends. The biggest enemy is who is pointing a finger at you. Okay? That is मुश्किल है तुम लोग. चलो next, go back. Important from prelims, the central CSTO members, prelims में सवाल आएगा, ठीक है? Definitely a question will come, very important. Yeah, next is nano urea fast tracked for approval despite incomplete trials, very important from environment and ecology or agricultural point of view. There is nano urea. What it's basically saying that whenever, suno, upar dekho, whenever a fertilizer is introduced into the agricultural sector, generally there is a level of tests that are carried out, and these level of tests are spread across minimum 3 seasons. They see if it is Kharif season crop, 3 seasons of Kharif, that particular ingredient which is introduced in the agricultural production is tested for 3 years, and the after effects are observed. Only after that, the introduction of that particular material is introduced into the agricultural production. But however, in case of this nano urea, they only did it for 2 seasons instead of for 3 seasons. Now read the article. It says nano urea, a product developed by important Indian farmers and fertilizer cooperative and heavily advertised by the central government as a panacea, P-A-N-A-C-E-A. Panacea means Dolo 750. You have headache, body ache, fever, you eat Dolo, you will be fit and fine. So panacea is a cure for all the problems, right? Advertised by central government as a panacea to reduce farmer dependence on packaged urea is yet to be fully tested despite having been fast tracked for commercial application. Very, very important. It goes on to say that normally 3 seasons of independent assessment. And who does the assessment? The ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Box banao, ICAR के बारे में पढ़ो, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, और बॉक्स के नीचे लिखो फील्ड ट्रायल्स, उसके बारे में पढ़ो, फील्ड ट्रायल्स, agricultural research, field trials, right, is required for approving a new fertilizer, but in this case of nano urea, this was reduced to 2. Moreover, scientists are still unclear if the product can on its own cut the farmer's dependence on urea. Now the problem here is we are only trying to reduce the dependence on urea. Why this dependence reducing is primarily because we are importing high quantity of urea every year, and as per the estimate of the government, approximately 40,000 crores of money is spent on importing urea from outside, which is then highly subsidized and given to the farmers. Okay? So that is the biggest challenge. So here the basic intention is to save some foreign exchange. It is intended to save some foreign exchange. That is the primary intention, right? Then it says nano urea. Yeah, now nano urea word patented, very important. Now patented, ek box banao, how patent is awarded. what is the duration of patent, what are the conditions of the patent, what is evergreening of patent, ये सब लिखो, लिखो बॉक्स बनाओ. Patent, how patent is awarded, what is the duration of patent, 20 साल 20 years, ठीक है. Patent, or when can a government revoke the patent and go for commercial application across the board, all these dimensions go back home and study, ठीक है. Now it says that nano urea is a patented and indigenously made liquid. Why this importance to indigenously? So that I don't have to import, right? Liquid that contains nanoparticles of urea, the most crucial chemical fertilizers for farmers in India. What they are saying, a single half liter bottle of nano urea can compensate for a 45 kg sack of urea. How much? 45 kgs is being compensated by half liter of nano urea. Now you need to understand when all urea is applied to a crop. First, in the initial stage of cropping, the urea is applied, and the second stage when the budding happens. When the budding happens and when the reproductive cycle of a plant starts, that is when the second phase of urea is what you call added. Read through. It is claimed that by 2025 India's domestic urea production as well as production of nano urea would together mean India would be self-sufficient. By 2025 India would be self-sufficient, both urea production and also this nano urea production, and would save the country so much of money. Go back. The standard practice in the cultivation of crops such as wheat, rice and mustard is to use at least 2 45 kg sacks of urea, which is an, underline the word, inorganic compound. Urea is not an organic compound, it is an inorganic compound and the crop's main source of nitrogen. They are using 2 sacks. Now see, the first packet is applied during the early sowing or transplantation stage of the crop, and the second sack application is done when the plant has sprouted a canopy of leaves and is approaching the reproductive phase of the plant growth. However, a crucial point omitted in government communication around nano urea is that the traditional packaged urea is still necessary during the initial stage as basal nitrogen of crop development. It means this half liter packet is only saving your second application. It is not completely doing away with the requirement of complete requirement of urea. It is only at the second stage, and it continues to say the nano urea could be useful once the plant grow, after which the product could be sprayed on its leaves. Based on the experiments, it was evident that 50% of the top dressed urea, that is the second stage application, could be replaced but not basal nitrogen. Very, very important from prelims perspective. Okay. Chalo, next article. Anybody any doubt what we have covered till here? Please ask. Basal nitrogen is basically the core part of the nitrogen which is applied when the transplantation happens. See, क्या होता है, when the soil is for the first time nitrogen that is applied, so it is the introduction of artificial nitrogen into the soil, that we call it basal nitrogen. When the first time you are trying to artificially influence the ingredients, the NPK components to the soil, that is when you call it basal nitrogen. So that is the first stage of artificial introduction or application of nitrogen to the soil, that we call it basal nitrogen. No, the first stage still you have to use that grains, the urea grains of 45 kg sack. Only in the second stage you can use, in place of this, the half liter. This is basically sprayed on the leaves. This half liter bottle is mixed in a certain volume of water and then spraying on the leaves happens, instead of what you call spraying the grains of urea on the leaves. Okay, that's the point here. Yeah, in the bottle, that, see, one thing you need to understand, that here in the basal nitrogen you are pouring it on the soil the soil is absorbing and the roots are absorbing and then the plant is absorbing. But when it comes to spraying, you are directly spraying on the plant. So you have to dilute the concentration. If you overdo, you take a small plant, put 2 grains of urea, a similar sized, similar aged plant, you put 10-15 grains of urea. You see the effect next day. The plant to which you have put more urea, it dies. The plant to which you have put proper urea will only sustain. So that is how, because of its effectiveness, because you are spraying it direct application on the plant leaves and the stem system, the absorption is direct. So that is the reason why they dilute it more, so that the plant does not die because of overdoing it. Okay? That is the reason why, though the content is less, the effect is more, because there is a change in the application pattern. No, when you go for mixed cropping, the plant that is more dependent on artificial nitrogen would still need it. Now you cannot segregate that plant with the other plant and try to save some. Instead of 45 you may spray 30 only, but you have to spray that 30. That is the point. Okay? Yeah. Chale, kuch aur? We all are farmers by nature. No? We want to know what is happening. किसी ने consent के ऊपर सवाल नहीं पूछा, किसी ने विकीपीडिया के ऊपर सवाल नहीं पूछा, because we are by birth closer to nature, closer to nature. ठीक है? चलो, preventive detention is also closer to nature. Preventive, but not our nature, somebody else's nature. ठीक? Preventive. अच्छा, layman terms, what is preventive detention? कौन बताएगा हाथ ऊपर? Layman. I don't want any technical. Layman perspective, what is preventive detention? भावना बोल. भावना. हाँ. आँख खोल के सो रहा है. हाँ. I had that art इसलिए बोल. हाँ बोल. Suspend from. Suspend का मतलब क्या है? I have performed a crime. How will you suspend me? From where you will suspend me? नौकरी तो है नहीं मेरे पास. हाँ? I have been roaming around. श्वेता नौकरी दे दे, श्वेता ने नौकरी तो दी नहीं मेरे को. I committed a crime. अब बोल, कहाँ से सस्पेंड करेगी? हाँ, कौन बताएगा? हाँ, लेफ्टिस्ट. हाँ, बोलो रे. हाँ, रश्मि. I think I took your class, no? Preventive detention. हाँ, बोल. हाँ, layman. I want layman language में answer. Mahinder, preventive detention. Preventive, stopping from doing something. No crime. No crime. If you are roaming around too much with somebody, what the parents will do? मोबाइल ले लिया जाएगा, खिड़कियों को स्ट्रांग बनाया जाएगा और तुमको कमरे में डाल दिया जाएगा. What they have done? They have done preventive detention, stopping you from committing a cognizable or a non-cognizable offense. है ना? That is at family level. We always say nation is a higher reflection of family structure. Yes or no? So to stop anybody in the society who is freely roaming, to stop him from committing a crime, what the government does it carries out an act which is called preventive detention. Now put a side heading and write the acts under which the provision for preventive detention is incorporated. The acts under which the provision for preventive detention is incorporated. सबसे पहले लिखो National Security Act 1980. National Security Act 1980. उससे पहले लिखो, उसके बाद लिखो MISA, MISA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act. Maintenance of Internal Security Act 1971. Indramma brought this. Maintenance of Internal Security Act MISA 1971. आगे ब्रैकेट में लिखो repealed in 1977. Repealed means removed. Okay? Repealed in 1977. Next act लिखो. Next act. Defense of India Act 1915. Defense of India Act 1915. UAPA लिखो, Unlawful Activities and Prevention Act 1967. Unlawful Activities and Prevention Act 1967. Again इंद्रम्मा, उसने जो बजाया ना सबका, किसी ने नहीं बजाया, ठीक है. Next, Prevention of Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, NDPS Act. Prevention of illicit traffic in NDPS, Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1988, right. These are the centrally applicable, matlab throughout the country. There are all the states, because policing, law and order is a state subject also. So various states have their own state acts also. The most notorious of all of them is the J&K Public Safety Act. Please make a note. J&K ka Public Safety Act, the most notorious, which the government of J&K, now the Union Territories, right. So the government would invoke the Public Safety Act, wherein most of the arrests happen under these particular acts only. Now why this is in news is primarily because there is, now can anybody tell me which is the article in the constitution that gives provisions for the preventive detention? कौन बोला? हाथ उठा के बोलो, नंबर, हाथ उठा के, अरे हाथ उठा के बोलो, सही बोल रहे हो. हाँ, आर्टिकल 22, वेरी गुड. Please make a note, ब्रैकेट में लिखो, आर्टिकल 22 of the constitution also has provisions related to preventive detention. Very, very important. Article 22. When you go back home, write the language of the article and see how beautifully it is written. Okay? Article 22 also has provisions related to this. Now, why it is in news is basically a report has come which says that the arrests under the preventive detention has increased. Now, see, as we say, as democracy progresses, what should happen? The arbitrariness or the arbitrary state acts should come down. Or yes or no? Arbitrary means illegal kind of thing, right? Or where state takes the support of an act and tries to impinge upon your liberty, safety or anything. So when the democracy progresses, the arbitrariness of the state acts towards its citizens should come down. See, what is the basic premise of the constitution? The basic premise of the constitution is the protection of the citizens. Yes or no? The protection of citizens. The protection of citizens from whom? The state abuse. Yes or no? अरे yes or no? अरे लक्ष्मीकांत यही बोलता है ना? अरे लक्ष्मीकांत यही बोलता है ना? The constitution's basic premise is to protect the citizens from whom? Their own government, the state abuse, right? So as the democracy progresses, the arbitrariness of the state should go down. But what is happening? It is increasing. If this is increasing, what is happening to this? So we are going more non-democratic in our approach when it comes to governance. Or yes or no? The topic is intended to highlight that by increasing the number of preventive detentions, the democratic policy approach is coming down and down. Now, can you tell me some dimensions where the state abuse, state excesses can have a negative effect? What all forms it can take? One is preventive detention. What else? Question समझ में आया? Other examples where the state abuse happens, excesses of the state against the citizens happen in whatever form. The sedition law, very good, very good. Yeah, next. one is emergency. Okay. Huh? That's all. Huh? Okay. Presidential emergency में 52, 352, 56, 60 सब आ गया. हाँ. Okay. She is very used to. हाँ. That's all. These are the only statutes. Box बनाओ. Examples of state excesses against its citizens. Examples of state excesses. If you compile these boxes and if you study them, I am telling you, you will do exceptionally good in mains. Okay? And that is the real battlefield. Prelims is not the battlefield. Come out of that mindset. Okay? Yeah. Now, it says that in this add one more dimension जो हमने लिखा था, add the CRPC also, section 151 of the CRPC, in the various statutes where the preventive detention related provisions are there. One more dimension is the CRPC, criminal procedure code, very important. What is the first line? Preventive detentions in 2021 saw a rise by over 23.7% compared with the year before, with over 1.1 lakh people being placed under preventive detention according to the statistics released by National Crime Records Bureau. It means, see, now what is the biggest problem with preventive detention? कौन बताएगा? What is the biggest problem with preventive detention? You said that you are detaining somebody thinking that he or she would commit an act of violence, cognizable or non-cognizable, if left free in the society. So you have detained them preventive for with the intention to prevent them from doing something wrong. Now my question is, what you call, what is the biggest problem with this preventive detention? Problem, low level of conviction, oh, at the later stage. It is at the later stage. What is the first problem? Excellent, Sai, shabash. The grounds of arrest are not intimated. This is one dimension. Second, very, very important, duration of arrest. If you normally arrest, if I commit a crime, the police, the moment it files an FIR, 24 घंटे के अंदर they have to take me in front of the magistrate कि सर इस ढक्कन को हमने पकड़ा है, कल ये करते हुए गणेश जी की पूजा चल रही थी, ये कुछ और गलत काम कर रहा था, तो हमने इसको पकड़ा है. So they are duty bound to take me to produce me in front of the magistrate. If it is a minor offence, the SHO, the jail, what you call, the station house officer can give me bail. But if it is not, then he will produce me in front of the magistrate. In this case, all those things need not be done. The biggest challenge here is the established procedures of CRPC. The established procedures of CRPC that ensure that the state excesses do not happen are not exercised here, are not exercised. Very, very important. It may lead to a police excess or a police abuse also. This is the biggest challenge. This is the biggest challenge. And one more biggest issue is that though you have given grounds of arrest, duration and all, the biggest abuse is that when you say the ground of arrest would not be communicated, this is only the communication dimension. The most important dimension is the grounds of arrest are so wide that they are liable for wrong interpretation. For example, there is a word called public order. Now this word is, the interpretation of this word can be so wide, anything can be put under this public order. So they can, if I am a habitual offender or my name is there in the rolls of police station, not a SI but as an offender, anything going wrong, important event scheduled, they can round me up and put me in the jail till such time that event is not completed. So that is where the public order word can be misused, is bound to be misused. That is why leading to so many number of people still languishing in jails. And if this abuse happens in a place, what Sai told, where APPSC is in vogue, then higher provisions closer to terrorism are invoked and this PD becomes a life threatening problem for that particular individual. Okay? So try to understand this dimension. Yeah. Now which is the next article? What is the time? We have 7 minutes to go. 28th edition of status report on India's external debt 21-22 has been released. Very important. What is India's external debt as per this report? Is a factual report actually, lot of factual information is there. $620.7 billion, right? And it has grown by 8.2%, very important. March 21 it was 573, now it is $620.7 billion, right? And in this 53% is dominated in US dollar, Indian rupee denominated debt, which is estimated at 31.2%. On top is US dollar. The moment it is US dollar, it means it is an external debt, because India में थोड़ी ना dollar में Reliance वाला debt देगा, ठीक है? So it is an external debt. Now when if it is an external debt, it could be a sovereign debt or it could be a non-sovereign debt. Sovereign debt means debt taken by the government. Non-sovereign debt means debt taken by individuals, maybe an entrepreneur or any company or anything, right? Now go back. External debt as a ratio to GDP, external debt to GDP ratio fell by 19.9% as at March 22 from 21.2% a year ago. So there is a reduction in the external debt to GDP ratio. So it is 19.9%, which is fairly very good. Believe me, it is fairly very good. The foreign currency reserves as a ratio to external debt, it is basically forex to external debt, stood slightly lower at 97.8%. Why this ratio is important? So that in the event of stoppage, complete stoppage of sovereign earnings or forex earnings, we are still capable of paying back 97.8% of the debt. It means your forex reserves will be standing somewhere between 580 to 590 billion dollars. Okay. The long term debt, very important. In a debt, always important to see the proportion or the proportionality between long term and short term. It is always advisable to have a higher proportion of a long term debt when compared to short term debt. It says that the long term debt estimated at 500 billion is approximately 80.4% and the short term debt is around 19.6%. So it is a good sign that most of our loans are long term debt. Whenever there is a long term debt, the repayment obligation is much more comfortable. The repayment obligation is much more, they are highly subsidized loans, highly discounted, and the long term nature of the debt shows that the debt is primarily for any capital expenditure, which has a positive multiplier effect on the economy. Okay, that is also important. It says that the short term trade credit was predominantly in the form of trade credit. It means that 19.6% ka 96% was through trade credit. Very important. Okay. Now the commercial borrowings, NRI deposit, short term credit and multilateral loans together accounted for 90% of the total external debt. Of the $620.7 billion, the commercial borrowing, the NRI deposits, the short term trade credits and the multilateral loans stood for 90%. Very important, right? And one more dimension, the NRI deposits marginally contracted, means reduced. Please make an underline. If a question comes on this before you go for your mains next year, prelims next year, very important. ठीक है. Now come to 2-3 paragraphs नीचे, नॉन सॉवरेन एक्सटर्नल डेट, ऊपर उसके लिखा है सॉवरेन एक्सटर्नल डेट, नीचे नॉन सॉवरेन एक्सटर्नल डेट. व्हाट इज द रेशियो ऑफ सॉवरेन एक्सटर्नल डेट? $130.7 billion. It means the out of the $620.7 billion, what is the sovereign external debt? $130.7 billion. It means non-sovereign debt is higher than this sovereign debt. It means the companies and the individuals and the private external borrowings is higher than the government external borrowing. It is a positive sign or a negative sign? नहीं, कौन बोला नेगेटिव? बोलो 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 बोलो. अरे हाथ उठाओ, अच्छा पॉइंट है. अरे वो ना प्यार उदय, it is negative. It means that the credit is not locally available. It means that the credit is coming from outside. You getting me? It only showcases that your savings are not institutionalized. It showcases so many things. Your savings, the private domestic savings are still not institutionalized. It means people are still holding cash. People are still holding cash. Okay, very important. Then one more, the debt service ratio. What is this debt to service ratio? कौन बताएगा? डेट टू सर्विस रेशियो. हाँ, इकोनॉमी ऑप्शनल. कौन है इधर? डेट टू सर्विस. अच्छा सर, इकोनॉमी ऑप्शनल भी होता है? होता है बेटा, होता है. CSR से पूछो, बताएगा. हाँ, डेट टू सर्विस कौन बताएगा? डेट टू सर्विस रेशियो. When you take a loan, there is a repayment obligation, yes or no? And that repayment obligation, if it is a sovereign loan in dollars or whatever currency you have taken, right? Now whatever earnings you are having, that is the export earnings. The debt to that export earnings, when you are trying to make a ratio, it becomes debt to service ratio. Please make a note, debt to service ratio. वहीं पे लिखो, the debt service payments to, the debt service payments to export earnings. The debt service payments to the export earnings is called debt to service ratio. Very very important. ये confusion होता है exam में, ठीक है? Earnings, export earnings. Export earnings is basically dollar earnings, ठीक है? Last paragraph it says that in a cross country perspective, means inter country perspective, various countries, India's external debt is modest, occupying 23rd position globally. It means we are not unnecessarily taking loans. We are conservative people, right? Generally our mind is very very conservative. That is good also. Yeah, another article, center to bring out guidelines to rein in whom? Social media influencers. इसमें one important thing is the guidelines will make it mandatory for social media influencers to underline, make clear disclosures regarding paid promotions. उसके नीचे there is one agency called Advertising Standards Council of India. Please make a box and read about this institution. Advertising Standards Council of India. It says that Meesho issues legal notice to social media influencers over alleged smear campaign. SMEAR. Meesho is basically a It's a brand. It's basically a apparel brand. Okay, clothing apparel brand. Okay, girls would know it better. I had to Google about it. Yeah. Next, seriously. Yeah. The next article: monetary tools alone can't tame inflation. What are the monetary tools to tame inflation? कौन बताएगा? Nirmala Sitharaman is saying. What is madam saying? Monetary tools alone can't tame inflation. Madam is trying to make a statement here. It is basically trying to tell RBI governor, don't unnecessarily keep increasing the whatever rates you are increasing, because monetary tools alone can't tame inflation. Now my question is, what are the various monetary tools to tame inflation? There are 3 tools, no? It is called reserve requirements. अभी 3 साल हो गया, अभी तू टेक्निकल नाम वर्ड नहीं बोलेगा तो कैसे हो? Reserve requirements, उसके अंदर CRR, SLR, all these things come. हाँ, first क्या है? Interest rates. Very good. The first is your interest rates. Primarily he is talking about here the repo rate. There are certain other rates also, but primarily the repo rate. Why? Because over a period of time, repo rate has become the external benchmarking interest rate across the economic circles. Third क्या है? Open market operations. Now Nirmala Sitharaman madam is trying to say that, sir, please try to understand, inflation cannot be controlled only by these 3 dimensions. Why she is trying to say that? RBI is actively involving in these 3 dimensions. They increase the CRR requirement, they are increasing regularly the what you call, the accommodative stance which they took during the COVID, now it is going. They are not accommodating anymore. Now they are increasing the interest rates, basic interest rates, and also they are vigorously participating in the open market. What is an open market operation? Wherein basically RBI on behalf of the government tries to do something. So if these things are there, what madam is trying to say, that it alone cannot tame inflation. If you try to do this over excess what is required, it will create an artificial yes or no? Yes or no? It will create an artificial. She says somewhere, I have to look at growth also. If you do this in excess, this will suffer. Okay? That's what madam is trying to tell RBI governor. Okay? Whether he will listen or not, it is up to him. Yeah, new foreign trade policy is coming, very important. The old foreign trade policy ended. See, generally till now the foreign trade policy was a 5-year document. 2015, 2015 to 2020 is the foreign trade policy documents, generally wherein the foreign trade, the government tries to tell. See, the foreign trade policy document is an indication to the world, how am I going to engage in my export trade. Okay? This is an indication to the world. Now, because it was due to be renewed in 2020, so in the aftermath of COVID and other dimensions, the government delayed it by 2 years. So now the new foreign trade policy will come into effect from 1st October 2022. Now 2 dimensions have to be seen. One, what changes the government will bring in the foreign trade policy, and second is what would be the duration of the foreign trade policy. Whether it will be only for 2 years, because 24 the government is going for elections, the central government is going for elections. What if you devise a policy for 5 years, somebody else's form a government, will that foreign trade policy as given by the old government will be carried forward by the new government or not? So all these dimensions have to be looked into. So that's what the what you call the article is trying to say. Just open the article. What is the first line? The new foreign trade policy will come with a vision statement that will set roadmap for future export growth. If you remember, recently a document came that which said that our exports, India's exports touched an all-time high of $422 billion. $422 billion. And what is your external debt? $620 billion. Now do you understand the importance of debt to service ratio? अरे समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं? It means that more or less 70 to 80% of my debt I can service through my export earnings. Very important. I can servicing of debt means repaying of debt. Okay, service my debt directly from the export earnings. So in this backdrop, a new foreign trade policy assumes greater significance or importance. Now they are talking about one dimension, fixing of export target. Open that paragraph. With a slowdown in export growth registered in the last few months, the government has to be careful about fixing an export target. At the start of the foreign trade policy, the government as part of the foreign trade policy generally makes a statement by 2025, if the document is still 2024 or 2025, I wish to attain this much of export growth. So because people will question, in 2022 you said $600 billion, but you did not cross 500 also. So the government has to be careful when they fix their export growth target. India's exports touched an all-time ho gaya. In 22-23, the ministry has a target of crossing 450 billion in goods exports, although internally efforts are being made to touch 470 billion. The Commerce Secretary BVR Subramaniam recently said. So one of person like you sitting in UPSC center preparing for UPSC, now he is making a statement, Commerce Secretary, saying that my country will strive to achieve $470 billion. After 20-25 years, Sushma will also be, you will be hearing, Sushma, अरे ये मेरी classmate थी, साला मैं पास भी नहीं हुआ, she has become a Commerce Secretary, है ना? That's what. A new section, one more, new section likely. While no big bang fiscal incentives can be expected in the new FTP, as export shops are not compatible with WTO rules. I want you to tell me what is this export shop. कौन बताएगा? पुराना खिलाड़ी. New students I don't expect. This is not SOPs. Export shops. What is this export shops? Be it technical. तुम generic word use करोगे मारोगा. अरे ढक्कन मैं बोल रहा हूँ, that is not SOP. It is shops. The word is shops. हाँ. What he is ending that line, which is not compatible with the export subsidies you give, no? Which export subsidy you had a problem with WTO recently? Box banao. Export subsidy issues with WTO between India, Japan, India, US. Make a box. Export subsidy में कहाँ पे problem आया था, legal problems. Make a box and try to add those. Okay. As export shops are not compatible WTO rules, incentives related to R&D are plausible, the source said. So it means that in this particular backdrop, I cannot go for declaring a higher amount of export growth that can be activated. And a new section on R&D service exports is likely. Please underline this statement. So basically the government might tell that I am trying to do something related to research and development that will augment my what? That will augment my exports. This can be expected from the government as part of the new foreign trade policy. Again, whether this policy would be for 2 years or for 5 years, we as of now do not know. And also the government would be careful in the backdrop of growing recession in the world. The clouds of recession are again back, right? when the clouds of recession are back in the global economic landscape, the government may not go ahead with declaring a higher figure related to foreign what you call export growth rate. Okay. So this is all about the article. When the foreign trade policy comes out, we will take a special class on the foreign trade policy. Okay? You do not have to read the previous foreign trade policy now. By the time you go for your prelims or mains examination, we will have another foreign trade policy. Okay? And the last article for today is article on Nagas, right? Very important. I think in one of the previous classes I spoke about this. They are trying to talk about who are these Nagas. Basically a tribal cult in the northeastern state of present day Nagaland. See, this is a big topic, but I will try to sum it up in next 10-15 minutes. Try to understand. See, Nagas, इतना गुस्से से मत देख यार, 10-15 मिनट की बात है. तुम फ्यूचर में तुम्हारा नाम चाहिए कि नहीं? होम सेक्रेटरी श्वेता, फिर मैं फ़ोन करूँगा मैडम, बोला प्लीज़ डोंट कॉल मी अगेन, बोल के मैडम फ़ोन रख देगा. यस और नो, है कि नहीं रश्मि? So if you want your name to be there, Home Secretary Shweta madam, so then you have to sustain 15 more minutes. Half an hour is good enough to have lunch, no? अरे ऐसे मत देखो यार. Good enough, no? Yeah. Even if you don't eat, no problem. Right? हाँ? पवन, तू आधा वैसे ही मरा हुआ है. That is why I told in Hindi that you should not understand what I say. ठीक है? You are half dead already. You are youth. Nothing has happened to you. What has happened to you? Nothing has happened to you. हाँ, ठीक है? हाँ. चलो. See, if you go back to history, when was the Naga club established? Anyone? Naga club. मेरा पुराना student Rashmi. See, the fight of Nagaland as a separate country is not new. If I go back in time, how old it is? More than a century. So the effort or the cry for a separate state of Nagaland is 100 years old, more than 100 years old. So now because of that effort being more than 100 years old, now what is their main agenda? What do they want? Their main agenda is basically a separate state of Nagaland, Greater Nagaland, which they call it as Greater Nagaland, which they call it as Nagalim, Nagalim. But now the problem is, what Nagalim they are asking for, it is not only the state of Nagaland. Say for example, this is the state of present day Nagaland. If this is the present day Nagaland, they are asking certain states of Arunachal Pradesh, they are asking certain districts of Assam, they are asking certain districts of Manipur, and also as Greater Nagalim. Now tell me, in 21st century 2022, is it possible? Probably it was possible in 1947 to 1950, but is it possible today? It is not possible. The moment you leave aside Myanmar, to chhod do. The moment he keeps talking about Nagalim, he says shut up, shut up, shut up. The moment your own states are saying shut up, how do you talk to him? There is no point, right? So now, though they have officially not agreed to downscale their demand of Nagalim, they continue with their demand of Nagalim. Other than this, they are asking for a separate constitution. Now the problem is, जिसको दिया था उसका ही ले लिया हमने. Having these kind of dreams when you have Amit Shah as your home minister, it is itself exploitative dream, right? So the constitution that they are asking for is called as Yezabo constitution. Now the government said, भैया ये तो कुछ ज़्यादा ही मांग रहे हो, है ना? So then they are like, अच्छा, not only constitution, we also want a separate flag. Now they are saying this separate flag, we will not use it as a state symbol, but we will use it as our cultural flag. the government all these days did not agree to this, but probably now the things are changing. The government may agree for this. May. Question is may. Till such time Amit Shah is there, it is always may. It will not be ever will. Okay? The government may agree for a separate cultural flag and it will define its usages. You cannot use it as a state symbol. You cannot use it as a state symbol, only as a cultural representation of your struggle of 100 years, more than 100 years that you have started in 1918. So now because of this, all this, there is one more dimension in the article. It is talking about an entity called NSCN Isaac Muiva, NSCN IM. See, NSCN has too many subgroups, but two major groups of NSCN are IM and K. When I will take a class on internal security, the Northeast insurgency, you will understand that this insurgency is all about tribal conflict, nothing else. Tribal conflict. Isaac Muiva represents one tribe, Khaplang represents another tribe. There are Angamis, there are Sumis, there are so many tribes. So each and every tribe has their own insurgency organization. 1979 born, 1989 split. So like this, again in Khaplang another split, one is K, one other is Kitovi Khaplang, KK. Like this there are so many splits in NSCN. But the government is in talks with only NSCN IM. So ये जितनी भी कहानी हो रही है, all the story which is happening, it is happening between government and NSCN IM only. So whenever the government goes ahead and signs a peace agreement or a peace treaty, he will explode some bomb somewhere. He will explode some bomb somewhere. Trying to showcase that whatever you are talking to him, he is not the complete representation of the Naga tribe. So he is only a minuscule part or some small part of the representation of the Naga cause. He is not the ultimate representation of the Naga cause. And in the NSCN, Khaplang faction is considered to be the most brutal NSCN faction in Northeast insurgency. When I will take a class on Northeast insurgency, I will talk at much more length about this. Okay? Chalo, to with this we come to the end of today's current affairs class. Anybody has any doubts other than agriculture, they can ask. See, what happens is, see, we are in a stage of our democracy, we are progressing more towards what you call integration or Indianization of our flag, Indianization of our country, wherein we are trying to showcase us as one common what you call source of belief system. When you go ahead with these kind of things, gradually how these will unfold you cannot know. So at this particular stage, giving another, see, there are many states which have their what you call flags, but these have not been used as state symbols in the past also. So when you bring in, see, regionalism, if it goes beyond a particular point, it will affect national integration negatively. So that is the reason why giving permission to have more and more state symbols in the form of flags, in the form of constitutions, it has a negative impact on the integration of our country. So this is the reason why the government is always skeptical of giving any of these rights. And whenever these rights were given in the past, it always, if you go back to history, whichever states have separate or special what you call special arrangements today, it has political fallouts. So Karnataka has a political fallout, J&K has a political fallout, one more state which has a separate flag, it has a political fallout. So these have been done to, what you call, to gather the attention of that particular crowd, to appease them. That was the intention. So now, because the central government need not do that, so that is the reason why. Now elections are due in Northeast. Probably this accommodation of this particular agenda now, which was crossed till now, again suddenly a tick is coming, it has got political underpinnings. So it has been so in the past. ठीक? Yeah, no, see, the optimum level of forex reserves is directly related to your debt service. It is said that globally, though it is not written anywhere, it is said that if you have forex reserves which are adequate to pay for your 3 months of import bills, it is sufficient. The present forex reserves what India has, it is sufficient for 13-14 months. So we have much more than what is required. So that is how, though there is no standardization here, but it has been believed that because 90 days is 3 months time frame, even if there is an economic shock globally, within 3 months generally it will subside. So if you have forex reserves, in that 3 months, even if you do not get $1 also, if your forex reserves are sufficient to pay back your import bills, import cover we call it, for 3 months, it is considered to be sufficient enough, right? So there are times India did not have forex reserves to pay for our import cover even for 2 weeks. That is when you went to IMF, sir please kuch de do, ठीक है? So that is the reason why now Pakistan recently got away. It was left with only 3 weeks. That is when IMF gave money. Sri Lanka को तो अभी तक दिया ही नहीं, ठीक है? So now it is going ahead with giving to Sri Lanka also maybe in times to come, ठीक है? Yeah, what else? IMF will put a condition. If you win the Asia Cup, you will get. हाँ, बोलो. What else? Rajkumar, Yogeshwar, anything? Last 1 minute, then we'll close. Anybody?
Sir, US is upgrading.
हाँ.
US is upgrading F-16.
F-16. हाँ.
Then it doesn't impact our internal security.
It will impact. That is why we are telling him, no. See, every country has its own national interest. You have your own national interest. He has his own national interest. His national interest is to make money. He will not leave any opportunity to make money. Whether it casts a negative shadow on your defense preparedness or your war waging capability, he is least bothered. US is, any capitalist country is least bothered what effect it will have on your country when it is dealing with any other country. AUKUS deal is a classic example, right? तुमने एक को हटा के दूसरे को दे दिया. So don't think from merciful angle के US तुम्हारे ऊपर रैम खाएगा और उसको F-16 नहीं दे. You do not have that strategic depth. PSIR में एक concept आएगा strategic depth. You do not have so much of strategic depth with US that you can stop US from giving that to Pakistan. You don't have that strategic depth. You may have that with Russia, but you will not have it. The strategic depth comes with interdependency between states. US is not dependent on India. So is India also not dependent. हो गया? भूख लग रही है? मुझे तो लग रही है. कौन कौन है जिसको नहीं लग रही? वो मेरे साथ रुक जाएगा, बाकी सब जाएंगे, ठीक है? चलो हम दोनों खाने चलते हैं पाजी. चलो, थैंक यू वेरी मच.